Chapter 1. The marble remembered everything. Kale knew this because he was the one forced to kneel over it. The great corridor outside the ceremonial hall gleamed white beneath chandeliers of cut crystal and sunfire glass. Nobles drifted through it in silks and lacquered armor, perfumed and radiant, their laughter rising toward the vaulted ceilings like incense smoke. But beneath the sweetness, the marble held darker stains. Sweat, blood, spilled wine, the faint residue of dominance that clung to stone like oil. Kale pressed the brush harder into the grout lines. He scrubbed until his knuckles split. The bristles rasped in steady strokes. Back and forth. Back and forth. He focused on the rhythm. It kept him quiet. It kept him small. The palace prepared for the mating convergence. Every 10 years, the alphas of noble houses gathered to select their bonds before the crown. Omegas were bathed, perfumed, painted, draped in gauze and silk. Their wrists adorned with bells so their tremors would sing prettily. Kale had washed the blood from those bells before. He was not one of the adorned. He was not even considered. He was assigned to the lower servant wing at birth. An omega without scent, without heat, without any of the lush biological signals that made nobles valuable. When he presented at 13, there had been no rush of sweetness in the air. No bloom of pheromones. No swelling of demand. There had only been silence. The midwife had frowned. "He's wrong," she had murmured. So Kale grew into the cracks of the palace instead of its light. He cleaned. He carried. He knelt. And the marble remembered him as it remembered all discarded things. Tonight the palace vibrated. Dominance pulsed faintly through the air, prickling along Kale's spine as the visiting alphas assembled in the grand hall. Even through 3 walls and a corridor's length, their collective presence pressed outward like a tide. Servants stumbled when it surged too hard. One girl dropped a tray of crystal flutes and burst into tears as the air thickened around her throat. Kale did not drop his brush. He did not sway. The pressure reached him and then dissolved, like water pouring into sand. He paused. The brush stilled in his hand. It always happened like this. When alphas flared, others staggered. Kale is absorbed. He did not know how. He did not know why. He only knew that when dominance flooded a room, something inside him opened quietly and swallowed the excess. No heat. No pleasure. Just stillness. A guard's voice barked down the corridor. "Clear the east passage. The king approaches." Every servant froze. The king. Kale had seen him only at a distance before, a towering silhouette armored in darkened steel etched with containment sigils. They said the metal was lined with rune ink and bone ash to prevent catastrophe. They said he had killed 2 bonded consorts by accident before he turned 25. They said his dominance could scorch lungs. His name was spoken rarely. Rethar. The Alpha King. Bootsteps thundered at the far end of the corridor. Not hurried. Not chaotic. Measured. Heavy. Each step struck marble like a hammer. Kale kept his head down. The corridor emptied in seconds. Nobles retreated behind carved doors. Servants pressed against walls. The chandeliers flickered. The air grew hotter. It wasn't metaphorical heat. It was physical. The glass trembled faintly in its mounts. The gold leaf edging the archways shimmered. Kale's palms flattened on the floor. The pressure reached him. This time it did not dissolve. It slammed into him. His lungs locked. His spine bowed. The brush slipped from his fingers and clattered across stone. For the first time in years, the force did not vanish on contact. It roared. Like a furnace door opening. Kale gasped and raised his head. He should not have. But instinct overrode obedience. At the end of the corridor, the Alpha King stood. Armor blackened and heavy. Containment sigils glowed faintly across his chest and gauntlets in searing lines of ember orange. His helmet was removed, tucked beneath one arm. His hair was dark gold, pulled back at the nape. His jaw carved sharp. His eyes were molten. Not metaphorically. They held light. Raw, contained light. 2 royal guards staggered half a step behind him, sweat beading on their brows. The king had stopped walking. Because Kale had looked up. For a long, impossible moment, they simply stared at one another. The corridor hummed. Rethar's gaze swept over Kale without recognition at first, just another servant on his knees. Then something shifted. His brow tightened. The air around him wavered. The pressure that crushed the walls surged. And then stuttered. Kale felt it. A tremor. Not weakening. Redirecting. His ribs ached as something inside him opened wider than it ever had before. The dominance pouring from the king did not crash outward. To bend. Like heat drawn toward cold. Toward him. Kale's vision blurred. He felt it enter. Not burning. Not tearing. Filling. His back straightened slowly without his permission. The trembling in the corridor stopped. The chandeliers steadied. The guards inhaled sharply as if surfacing from water. The king took one step forward. The marble did not crack beneath his boot. Another step. Closer. Kale should have lowered his head. He did not. He couldn't. His body was locked in a strange equilibrium, as if gravity itself had shifted and he was the anchor point. Rethar stopped 2 paces away. Up close, the heat radiating from him was suffocating. But beneath the heat, there was strain. His jaw was clenched so tightly the muscles feathered beneath skin. Sweat slid from his temples despite the cool corridor air. His dominance did not flare wildly. It circled, searching. And when his gaze dropped to Kale's hands splayed against marble, it steadied. "Who?" the king asked quietly, voice deep enough to vibrate bone. "Are you?" No one addressed Kale directly. Ever. He swallowed. "I clean, your majesty." Rethar's nostrils flared slightly. "Your scent." Kale went still. There was none. There had never been. "I do not produce one," he said, forcing the words through a throat that felt suddenly too narrow. A murmur rippled from the guards. An omega without scent was considered defective. Rethar did not recoil. Instead, his expression shifted into something sharper. Interest. The air tightened again, but not violently. Curiously. "Stand." It was not shouted. It did not need to be. Kale obeyed. His legs trembled at first, but the tremor smoothed out the moment he straightened fully. They were nearly the same height. The realization struck both of them at once. Too close. Too balanced. The king's eyes narrowed. The sigils across his gauntlets flared brighter. The corridor temperature spiked. Then dropped. Kale inhaled sharply as a flood of raw alpha dominance poured into him like molten metal. He did not burn. He did not collapse. His spine locked rigid. His heartbeat synchronized to something larger than his body. The king exhaled. It was the first relaxed breath Kale had heard from him. "You," Rethar said slowly, voice no longer strained, "are not collapsing." "No, your majesty." "Why?" Kale did not know. But something in him did. "I take what spills," he answered before fear could silence him. The guards shifted uneasily. Rethar's gaze sharpened further. "Take," the king repeated. His hand lifted slightly. The gauntlet glowed white-hot along its seams. The corridor held its breath. "Come here," Rethar ordered. Kale stepped forward. The marble remembered everything. It would remember this too. Because when Kale closed the distance, when the king's armored hand hovered inches from his bare wrist, the sigils flared. And for the first time in history, the Alpha King hesitated before touching an Omega. The corridor lights dimmed. And somewhere deep in the palace, beneath silk and ceremony, something ancient shifted awake. Chapter 2, The King's Weight. The Alpha King did not touch him. Not yet. His gauntlet hand hovered inches from Kale's wrist, heat radiating in visible waves. The containment sigils etched into the armor pulsed brighter, reacting to proximity. The air between them shimmered like distorted glass. Kale stood perfectly still. Every instinct in his body was screaming. Not fear. Recognition. Something inside him had uncurled when Rethar stepped close. It wasn't desire. It wasn't heat. It was the quiet opening of a vast, empty space, a hollow that had waited its entire life to be filled. Rethar's jaw flexed. His golden eyes narrowed, studying Kale like a weapon he didn't remember forging. "You're absorbing me," the king said. It wasn't accusation. It was discovery. Kale swallowed. "I don't mean to." The words sounded small in the corridor. Rethar exhaled slowly through his nose. The breath steamed faintly in the cooler air. For 30 years, the king said, voice low, controlled with visible effort, everything around me burns. He lifted his armored hand a fraction higher. Stone fractures. Metal warps. People faint. The guards behind him shifted their footing, uneasy. But you, Rethar continued, eyes never leaving Kale's face, are standing. Kale felt it then. Not just the dominance. The pain beneath it. Rethar's power wasn't clean. It wasn't elegant. It was compressed too tightly inside a body never meant to hold that much force. It roared against containment runes and bone-etched steel. It battered at his ribs and spine. It hurt him. Kale hadn't understood that before. The king wasn't dangerous because he enjoyed it. He was dangerous because he was drowning. Kale's fingers curled at his sides. His pulse thrummed strangely in his ears. I think, Kale said quietly, you're leaking. One of the guards made a startled sound. Rethar barked a short, humorless laugh. Leak, he echoed. Boy, I am a breach in the fabric of this realm. Kale lifted his eyes. Up close, Rethar was massive. Broad shoulders, thick arms, neck corded with restrained power. Scars crossed his collarbone where earlier containment attempts had failed. Yet beneath all of it, Kale saw exhaustion. Bone dip. I don't leak, Rethar said. I overflow. Kale stepped closer without thinking. The guards reached for their weapons. Rethar lifted one finger. They froze. The king's gaze dropped to Kale's bare hand. You should not approach me, Rethar said. I know. You could die. Yes. And you're still moving. Kale nodded faintly. I always move toward pressure. It was the truest thing he had ever said. Rethar's eyes darkened. Kale stopped directly in front of him. The heat was immense now. His skin prickled. His lungs burned. The silk of his servant tunic curled slightly at the edges. But beneath that, relief. The dominance pouring off the king surged again, testing him. Kale felt it hit the hollow inside his chest and vanish. Rethar sucked in a sharp breath. His shoulders dropped a fraction. Not in weakness. In release. What are you? The king whispered. Kale didn't answer. He didn't have language for it. Instead, he lifted his hand. Slowly. Carefully. He placed 2 fingers against the edge of Rethar's breastplate. The metal was scorching. His skin did not blister. The sigils flared violently, reacting to direct contact. Kale gasped as a rush of power slammed into him, raw alpha dominance flooding his nervous system like lightning through water. His knees almost buckled. Almost. But the void inside him widened. Swallowed. The pressure equalized. Rethar groaned. It was a low, involuntary sound torn from his chest. The guard stared. Kale's breath came faster now. His vision shimmered. His fingers curled instinctively against the armor. Rethar grabbed his wrist. Not violently. Desperately. The king's grip was iron. Don't, Rethar said hoarsely. If you touch skin. I won't, Kale whispered. He already knew. This wasn't about skin. It was about circuit. Rethar's breathing slowed. His pupils constricted. For the first time since adolescence, the constant internal scream faded. He felt quiet. He hated it. He needed it. What is your name? Rethar demanded. Kale. The syllable echoed strangely between them. Rethar repeated it. Kale. The name tasted different in his mouth. He tightened his grip unconsciously. Kale did not pull away. I felt you, Rethar said. Before I saw you. Like gravity bending. Kale nodded. I felt you too. How? Kale hesitated. Then spoke. When alphas enter a room, everyone else feels pressure. Rethar's eyes flicked briefly to the guards, who were watching with stunned disbelief. But I feel direction, Kale continued. Toward you. Silence settled. Not the awkward kind. The dangerous kind. Somewhere deeper in the palace, bells rang to signal the beginning of the convergence procession. Rethar did not turn toward the sound. His entire focus was on the Omega in front of him. You were scrubbing floors, the king said. Yes. During mating rites. Yes. His jaw clenched. They hide omegas like you in service corridors? Kale didn't answer, because the answer was obvious. Rethar released Kale's wrist abruptly and stepped back. The sudden loss of contact sent a wave of heat crashing through his body. He staggered half a step. Kale reacted instantly. He caught Rethar's forearm with both hands. The moment he did, the surge stopped. The king froze. Kale froze. Their breaths tangled. The guards stared. The corridor lights dimmed again. Rethar's pulse thundered visibly at his throat. "You caught me," the king said softly. Kale hadn't realized he had. "I couldn't let you fall." Rethar stared down at him. Something primal flickered behind his eyes. Not lust. His body recognized Kale as stabilizer, as anchor, as solution. Rethar's hand slid from Kale's wrist to his forearm. Bare skin met metal. Kale hissed softly. The power transfer intensified. His chest expanded painfully. His spine arched. He drew in a shaking breath. The void inside him stretched wider than it ever had. He felt fuller. Stronger. Not healed. Activated. Rethar leaned closer. "You are regulating me," the king murmured. Kale nodded, breathing hard. "Yes." Rethar's voice dropped lower. "Then the palace will tear you apart for this." Kale met his gaze. "I already belong to the floors." Rethar's lips twitched faintly. A humorless shadow of a smile. "No," he said. His hand tightened around Kale's arm. "You belong to me now." The words weren't romantic. They were territorial. Instinctive. Final. Footsteps echoed from the far hall. Priests. Council members. The mating convergence was advancing. Rethar straightened slowly, pulling Kale with him. He turned toward the approaching entourage, armor humming with contained force. Then he leaned down close to Kale's ear. His breath was hot. "Steady. If they try to separate us," Rethar whispered, "do not let go." Kale closed his eyes briefly. "I don't think I can." The king's grip tightened. Because neither of them was meant to be alone anymore. And somewhere deep inside Kale's chest, the hollow that had defined his entire existence began to hum, not with hunger alone, but with anticipation. Chapter 3, Procession of the Unwanted. They did not give Kale time to breathe. The corridor filled with motion, silk brushing stone, polished boots, the dry whisper of ceremonial robes. Priests arrived first, staffs tipped with sun crystal. Then counselors in layered velvet. Then noble alphas whose auras pressed outward like territorial fog. Kale felt every one of them. Their dominance washed over him in waves. And every wave vanished into his chest. He stood beside Rethar, fingers still wrapped around the king's armored forearm, and realized with quiet horror that he was becoming a sinkhole. The more power entered the space, the more his body opened. The king did not release him. Not when the high priest stopped short at the sight of Kale clinging to royal armor. Not when murmurs rippled through the gathered court. Not when Queen Regent Malvesa stepped forward, her lips tightening at the omega in servant gray. "What is this?" she demanded. Rethar didn't look at her. His gaze stayed fixed ahead. "This," he said evenly, "is Kale." The way he spoke the name made Kale's spine tighten. Possession without ceremony. Recognition without permission. The Queen Regent's eyes flicked over Kale, the bare hands, the cleaning tunic, the thin frame. "A servant," she said flatly. "Yes," Rethar replied. "And you are holding him." "Yes." Her nostrils flared. "Release him." The command carried alpha weight. Kale felt it strike his nervous system like a slap. His knees almost buckled. Rethar's grip tightened instantly. The king turned. Slowly. Every noble alpha in the hall felt it when Rethar shifted his attention. The temperature rose. Not violently. Deliberately. "I do not take commands," Rethar said. The Queen Regent stiffened. "You are interrupting the convergence." Rethar looked down at Kale. Kale's vision swam. The void inside him was stretching wider, drinking not just Rethar's dominance now, but the ambient pressure of the entire palace wing. His heartbeat had become loud in his ears. His skin tingled as if something under it was waking. "He is stabilizing me," Rethar said. The words landed like thrown iron. The priests froze. The counselors whispered. The Queen Regent's face went pale. That's impossible. Rethar met her gaze. I was moments from a flare collapse in that corridor. His fingers flexed against Kale's arm. Then he touched me. Silence fell. Kale realized everyone was staring at him. He hated it. He hated being seen. The High Priest recovered first. Your Majesty, he said carefully, even if this Omega has unusual properties, he cannot be introduced into the mating rite without evaluation. Rethar's jaw tightened. Kale felt the surge before it happened. He tightened his grip. The dominant spike was immense. Columns groaned. Several nobles staggered backward. Kale inhaled sharply as the energy slammed into him, flooding his chest, his throat, his skull. His vision flashed gold. He swallowed it. The pressure vanished. Rethar exhaled. The king stared down at Kale with something raw in his eyes. Gratitude. Something darker beneath. You see, Rethar said quietly. The High Priest's staff trembled. The Queen Regent took a step back. You will not take a floor cleaner to the altar, she said. Rethar leaned closer to Kale. His mouth brushed Kale's ear. Stay with me, he murmured. It wasn't a request. It was a directive burned straight into Kale's nervous system. Kale nodded. His body already knew. Rethar straightened. He walks beside me. They tried to protest. They tried to invoke tradition. They tried to cite ancient statutes. Rethar began moving. The procession reorganized around him automatically, pulled by gravity. Kale was guided forward with a firm hand at his back. He walked. Bare feet on ceremonial marble. Servant tunic among silks. Omega without scent inside the Alpha Convergence. The great doors of the Sun Hall opened. Heat rolled out like a living thing. The chamber was massive, domed ceiling, solar sigils carved into every arch, raised platforms draped in gold for noble pairings. Perfumed Omegas waited behind translucent screens. Their scents hit Kale all at once. Spiced. Artificial. His stomach clenched. Not with jealousy. With rejection. None of it touched him. Rethar guided Kale to the center dais. The crowd parted. Whispers followed. Who is that? Why is he unadorned? Why is the king holding him? Kale's hands shook. He tried to lower them. Rethar noticed. His thumb brushed Kale's knuckles. The contact sent another surge through Kale's chest. He gasped softly. Rethar leaned close. Breathe, the king murmured. Kale obeyed. The Alpha thrones waited ahead. The mating altar stood empty. The High Priest approached cautiously. Your Majesty, he said. The Omega candidates are prepared. Rethar didn't look at them. He looked at Kale. Ooh, he said. Kale blinked. Yes. Rethar's voice dropped. You feel it too, don't you? Kale swallowed. Yes. What? Kale hesitated. Then spoke. When you're close, he said softly, the hollow in me stops screaming. Rethar closed his eyes for half a second. When he opened them, something had shifted. You are not defective, Rethar said. The word struck Kale harder than any dominance wave. You are an answer. The High Priest cleared his throat. Sire. Rethar lifted one hand. The sound died. Bring the cushions, the king ordered. The ceremonial attendants hesitated, then obeyed. Cushions were placed at the altar. The Queen Regent watched with naked alarm. You cannot rewrite the rite, she hissed. Rethar turned. His eyes burned. I can burn the rite to ash. No one challenged him. Rethar guided Kale to the altar. Kale knelt because his legs gave out. The floor was warm beneath his palms. The Alpha King knelt across from him. Armor creaked. Containment sigils flared. Their proximity sent another wave through Kale's body. He braced. Absorbed. Rethar studied him with intense focus. Tell me when it becomes too much. Kale shook his head weakly. It already is. Rethar's lips curved slightly. Good. The High Priest approached reluctantly. By ancient law, he recited, voice strained, the Alpha may select his bond. Rethar didn't hesitate. I select Kale. The chamber erupted. The Queen Regent shouted. Omegas cried out. The council rose in protest. Rethar didn't care. He reached forward, bare fingers brushing Kale's wrist. The instant skin met skin. Kale arched sharply. Power tore through him like a tidal wave. His vision went white. The void inside him opened fully. And for the first time in his life, it didn't feel empty. It felt alive. Rethar sucked in a harsh breath. His shoulders dropped. The constant internal roar vanished. He stared at Kale like a man seeing color for the first time. Kale gasped. His spine bowed. Something under his skin began to glow faintly. The high priest staggered back. The Queen Regent screamed. Rethar tightened his grip. Stay with me, he growled. Kale's voice came out broken. I am. And deep inside Kale's chest, the hunger stopped being pain. It became purpose. 7 chapters had been set in motion. And the palace had just chosen its catastrophe. Chapter 4. The moment stretched. Skin to skin. Alpha to void. Kale's fingers locked reflexively around Rethar's. The contact detonated through him. Not fire. Not pain. Pressure. A colossal inward rush, like the collapse of a star happening inside his ribcage. He cried out, a sound torn from somewhere beneath language, as the dominance that had ruled the chamber for decades reversed direction. It didn't radiate anymore. It flowed. Straight into him. The nobles closest to the altar staggered. Several Omegas collapsed behind their silk screens. The high priest dropped his staff. Rethar froze, eyes blown wide, breath ripping out of his chest. For the first time in his life, the storm inside him stopped screaming. He felt cool. Not cold. The sensation was so foreign it nearly broke him. Kale's knees hit the cushions hard. His back arched. Every nerve in his body lit up at once. The hollow in his chest expanded violently, no longer empty, no longer starving, but actively pulling. He could feel Rethar now. Not just his heat. His core. His endless generation of alpha power. It poured into Kale in heavy waves, thick and radiant, filling every empty channel inside him. Kale gasped. His lungs dragged in air they hadn't known they were missing. The skin along his arms prickled. Then burned. Then softened. The faint gray pallor that had always clung to him flushed suddenly warm. Color rushed back into his hands. His fingers thickened. Strength returned to tendons that had spent a lifetime compensating for weakness. The chamber watched in stunned silence as the servant Omega changed. It started where Rethar held him. The veins beneath Kale's skin darkened, then ignited. Black lines that had never existed before traced up his forearm like living cracks in porcelain. Then they shifted. Gold bled through the darkness. Molten. Luminous. The lines didn't vanish. They transformed. The marks of emptiness became channels of light. Kale threw his head back and sucked in a deep, shaking breath. It felt obscene. It felt holy. It felt like drowning upward. Rethar stared at him. His grip tightened. Kale, he whispered. The name vibrated differently now. Carried resonance. Kale's eyes fluttered open. They weren't hollow anymore. Light swirled through them. Not pure gold. Not shadow. The high priest stumbled backward. The void, someone whispered. Another voice answered. No. The circuit. Rethar felt it. The connection. It wasn't one way. It never had been. Kale wasn't just absorbing him. He was stabilizing the feedback. Rethar's body responded instinctively. His spine straightened. His breathing evened. The containment sigils across his armor dimmed. The metal stopped glowing. For the first time since adolescence, he was not fighting himself. His power wasn't trapped. It was moving, completing a loop. Rethar leaned forward. His forehead nearly touched Kale's. Are you still with me? Kale swallowed hard. Yes. His voice was different. Lower. Stronger. And you? Rethar closed his eyes briefly. Yes. The Queen Regent screamed. This is heresy. He's draining you. Rethar didn't turn. He's saving me. Kale squeezed Rethar's hand. The movement sent another surge through both of them. Kale shuddered. The hunger inside him shifted. It was no longer desperate. It was directional. Purposeful. He could feel the flow now. Could feel when Rethar's power spiked. Could feel how to pull it safely. Instinct guided him. He drew a deeper pull. Rethar groaned. His head dipped forward, resting briefly against Kale's temple. The contact was accidental. Devastating. Their breaths tangled. The Alpha's scent, hot metal and ozone, flooded Kale's senses. Kale inhaled it without thinking. The response was immediate. Rethar's dominance surged. Kale drank it. His body reacted violently. Muscle knit under skin. His shoulders broadened. His spine lengthened. The servant tunic pulled tight across his chest. The gold lines under his skin flared brighter, tracing up his neck, ghosting along his jaw. The crowd backed away. This was no mating ceremony anymore. This was a convergence event. The high priest tried to speak. Nothing came out. Rethar lifted his free hand slowly. The chamber obeyed. Enough, the king said. His voice carried without heat now. Without distortion. It was pure authority. Guards froze. Nobles fell silent. Rethar looked down at Kale. You're overdrawing. Kale laughed weakly. I waited my whole life for this. Rethar's jaw tightened. He cupped Kale's face with his ungloved hand. The contact sent another pulse through the circuit. Kale whimpered. Not in pain. In saturation. Easy, Rethar murmured. You'll burn out. Kale leaned into the touch. I won't. How do you know? Kale met his gaze. Because you're infinite. Rethar stared. The truth of it hit him slowly. He wasn't losing power. He was redistributing it. The void Omega wasn't consuming him. He was completing him. A system designed around excess. An Alpha who generated too much. An Omega who absorbed too much. They were not lovers by chance. They were architecture. The Queen Regent lunged forward. Break it. Separate them. Rethar turned his head. His eyes were calm. Terrible. No. He rose to his feet, pulling Kale with him. Kale swayed. Rethar caught him instantly, hauling him flush against armored chest. Kale's hands fisted in metal. The proximity amplified everything. Kale gasped. Rethar growled low in his throat. The sound rolled through the chamber like distant thunder. Anyone who touches him, Rethar said quietly, dies. No one moved. Rethar wrapped one arm fully around Kale's waist. Support. Possession. Kale's head fell briefly against Rethar's shoulder. He was shaking. Not from weakness. From too much life. Rethar held him tighter. You are mine now, Rethar murmured into Kale's hair. Not romance. But Kale didn't argue. He couldn't. His body already belonged to the circuit. Rethar lifted his head. To all who witnessed this, he announced, voice echoing across the Sun Hall, this Omega is under royal protection. His gaze swept the room. He is not a servant. The pause. He is my stabilizer. The word landed heavier than consort. He walks beside me. Rethar turned toward the exit. The guards parted instinctively. He carried Kale out of the Sun Hall in his arms. Not gently. Securely. Kale curled against his chest, fingers digging into armor as another wave of power rolled through him. Outside, the palace air felt thin. Kale sucked it in greedily. Rethar moved fast. Boots thundered down corridors. Servants flattened themselves against walls. Kale clung to him. Rethar, he breathed. Yes. I can feel everything. Rethar didn't slow. I know. The hunger. I know. It's getting louder. Rethar tightened his hold. Good, he said. Because somewhere deep in his alpha core, something ancient had awakened too. Not just relief. Not just balance. Claim instinct. Protective drive. Bond hunger. They weren't finished. They had only closed the first loop. And the circuit had just begun to feed. 7 chapters were moving. And the palace was already burning behind them. Chapter 5. Rethar did not slow until the palace gates sealed behind them. He carried Kale through scorched corridors and startled courtyards, past kneeling guards and servants who dared not lift their eyes. His stride was relentless. Each step rang with restrained violence, armor whispering heat against stone. Kale clung to him. Not out of fear. Out of necessity. The circuit between them had stabilized enough for movement, but not enough for separation. Every inch of distance threatened collapse. Kale could feel it in his bones, the way Rethar's energy spiked whenever their chests pulled apart even slightly. He tightened his grip instinctively. Rethar felt it. His arm locked more firmly around Kale's back. "You're shaking," the king said. Kale swallowed. "Everything is loud." Rethar exhaled through his teeth. He pushed open the doors to the western royal wing with one armored shoulder. The heavy panels boomed against the walls. Inside, the air was cooler, quiet, shielded by ancient wards. Rethar crossed the threshold and slammed the doors shut behind them, throwing the iron bolt with a sharp metallic crack. The world narrowed. Only them. Kale's breath hitched as Rethar lowered him to his feet. The moment his soles touched marble, Kale swayed. Rethar caught him instantly. "Easy." Kale's knees buckled. The hunger inside him surged again, frantic now without constant skin contact. Rethar pulled him flush, one hand splayed across Kale's spine. The contact steadied the flow. Kale pressed his forehead against Rethar's collarbone and gasped. He could feel the alpha's heart. Controlled. Overflowing. "You're bleeding power," Kale murmured. Rethar grimaced. "I always am." "No," Kale whispered. "More than before." Rethar looked down at him sharply. The circuit woke something. Kale nodded. "Yes." His fingers curled into the seams of Rethar's breastplate. "It's not overflow anymore." Rethar went still. "It's production." Kale lifted his head. Their eyes met. Understanding passed between them without words. Rethar's body was responding to the bond. His alpha core was ramping up, generating energy at catastrophic levels now that it had somewhere to go. The stabilizer had become a catalyst. Rethar swore under his breath. Kale swallowed hard. "I can take it," he said. Rethar cupped his jaw. "You don't know your limits." Kale leaned into the touch. "I didn't have limits before." Rethar stared at him. The truth of that struck deep. Kale had lived as an empty vessel. Now he was being flooded. Rethar's thumb brushed Kale's cheek. His skin was warm. Alive. Too alive. "We need to ground this," Rethar said. Kale nodded shakily. "How?" Rethar hesitated. His jaw tightened. The answer was instinctive. Bond grounding. Claim anchoring. Skin to skin. Full contact. "But the armor." Rethar hissed in frustration. "This armor is choking the circuit." Kale nodded. "I can taste it." Rethar blinked. "Taste." Kale gestured weakly at the breastplate. "The power stagnates there." Rethar's lips parted. No one had ever described his energy like that before. He reached for the release clasp at his shoulder. The first buckle resisted. Rethar tore it free with a savage wrench. Metal rang sharply against the floor. Heat rolled out of him in a visible wave. Kale gasped and tightened his hold. Rethar braced. Containment sigils flared violently. The warded chamber trembled. "Don't let go," Rethar growled. Kale didn't. He wrapped both arms around Rethar's torso, pressing himself against scorching armor as another buckle snapped loose. Steam vented from the joints. The breastplate came away in Rethar's hands and hit the marble with a thunderous crash. Kale cried out. The exposed alpha heat was overwhelming. Rethar's bare chest radiated power like a furnace core. The air distorted around him. Kale's knees nearly gave. Rethar grabbed him, dragging him closer instead of letting him fall. The circuit flared open. Kale screamed. Not from pain. From saturation. Golden lines ignited beneath his skin, racing up his arms, across his collarbones, down his ribs. His spine arched violently. Rethar groaned. His hands dug into Kale's back. "Stay," he commanded hoarsely. Kale's nails bit into Rethar's skin. "I am." He was shaking. He was glowing. His servant tunic smoked where it brushed Rethar's bare chest. Rethar tore the fabric away without thinking. It ripped clean off Kale's shoulders. Kale gasped as his bare skin met Rethar's. The contact was catastrophic. Power detonated between them. The warded windows shattered outward in a burst of golden light. Kale sobbed. Rethar roared. Their bodies slammed together, chest to chest. The circuit locked. Kale's void opened fully. Rethar's alpha core poured. The hunger inside Kale found direction. It wasn't mindless anymore. It was structured. He drank with intent. He pulled in controlled waves instead of chaotic gulps. His body adapted on the fly, muscle thickening, lungs expanding, bones reinforcing. Rethar felt it happen. Felt Kale stabilize. Felt himself stabilize in return. They clung to each other like survivors in a storm. Kale's forehead pressed against Rethar's shoulder. His breath came in ragged gasps. Rethar cradled his head. "You're doing it," Rethar whispered. Kale nodded weakly. "I can feel the rhythm." Rethar closed his eyes. The pressure in his veins eased. The eternal burn retreated. He could breathe. He buried his face in Kale's hair and inhaled deeply. For the first time in his life, an Omega's presence didn't threaten him. It grounded him. Kale's scent was faint, metallic. Ozone and rain. Void touched by sun. Rethar's grip tightened. "You're not empty anymore," he murmured. Kale lifted his head. His eyes glowed softly. "No," Kale said. "Now I'm hungry with purpose." Rethar huffed a broken laugh. "Good." Kale's fingers traced the scarred lines of Rethar's chest. Every touch pulled more power. Every breath deepened the bond. They stood tangled in golden light and broken armor, bodies pressed together, neither willing to retreat. Outside the warded chamber, alarms began to sound. The palace had finally realized what it had unleashed. Rethar didn't care. He cupped Kale's face. "Listen to me," he said quietly. Kale focused through the roaring inside him. "Yes. They will come." Kale nodded. "I know. They will try to separate us." Kale's jaw tightened. "They can't." Rethar's eyes burned. "Correct." He leaned his forehead against Kale's. "You are not a servant anymore." Kale swallowed. "What am I?" Rethar's voice dropped. "My circuit." Kale closed his eyes. The hunger purred. The alpha core answered. 7 chapters were collapsing toward their center. And somewhere deep in both of them, something ancient and unstoppable finished locking into place. They were no longer two bodies. They were a system. And systems demand completion. Chapter 6. The alarms did not come all at once. They rose in layers. First the low resonance wards vibrating through the stone, then the outer bells, then the sharp, metallic cry of internal lockdown sigils activating across the west wing. Rethar felt every one of them ripple through the palace. Kale felt them too. They traveled through the circuit like distant thunder, setting off reflexive surges inside both of them. Kale's fingers dug into Rethar's back. The hunger inside him swelled. Not chaotic. Directional. Predatory. "They're sealing the wing," Kale whispered. Rethar nodded. He could sense the guards converging through the wards, could feel the pressure signatures of armed alphas approaching. His alpha core responded instantly. Power rose. Kale absorbed it. The feedback loop tightened. Rethar's breathing steadied. Kale's pulse synchronized. "They're afraid," Rethar said quietly. Kale lifted his head. "Of you." Rethar shook his head. "Of what we are together." Kale swallowed. The golden lines beneath his skin pulsed softly, alive now, responsive to Rethar's heartbeat. He had never known what it meant to inhabit his own body until this moment. Every nerve sang. Every breath carried weight. Every thought moved slower, deeper, anchored. Footsteps thundered outside the chamber doors. Orders were shouted. Steel scraped stone. Kale flinched at the sound. Rethar felt it. He shifted, placing himself between Kale and the door without conscious thought. Protective instinct slammed through him. Possession followed. Not symbolic. Biological. He curled one arm fully around Kale's waist and pulled him tight. Kale's bare chest pressed against Rethar's. The contact reignited the circuit. Kale gasped. Rethar growled. The warded chamber brightened with golden light. "You don't belong on your knees anymore," Rethar murmured into Kale's hair. Kale's breath shuddered. I don't know how to stand yet. Rethar's hand slid up Kale's spine. You will. The doors boomed under the first impact. Kale jumped. Rethar didn't. He turned his head slightly. They're testing the wards. Kale nodded. His voice was soft. They won't stop. Rethar's jaw tightened. No. He cupped Kale's face. Look at me. Kale did. His eyes were luminous now, dark gold threaded with shadow. Rethar felt the echo of his own power reflected back at him through those eyes. You trust me, Rethar said. It wasn't a question. Kale swallowed. Yes. Good. Rethar leaned down. His mouth brushed Kale's temple. The contact was brief. Intentional. It sent a surge through the circuit that made Kale cry out softly. Rethar pulled back just enough to look into Kale's eyes. This is going to hurt, he said. Kale nodded. I know. But it will lock us. Kale didn't hesitate. Do it. The doors cracked under a second blow. Stone dust drifted from the ceiling. Rethar placed his palm flat against Kale's sternum. Right over his heart. Kale sucked in a sharp breath. Rethar closed his eyes. Then he opened himself fully. Alpha dominance poured into Kale in a deliberate flood. Not chaotic. Not leaking. Directed. Focused. Claim energy. Kale screamed. His back arched violently as the surge hit him head-on. Every golden line beneath his skin flared incandescent. His heart slammed against Rethar's palm. The void inside him widened beyond anything he had known. For a moment he thought he would fracture. Then instinct took over. He pulled. He drank the dominance. Not passively. Actively. The circuit snapped into a deeper configuration. Rethar groaned. His knees nearly buckled. He grabbed Kale's shoulders, holding him upright as Kale convulsed against him. The warded chamber shook. The doors burst inward in a shower of splintered wood. Guards poured in. Alphas raised weapons. Then stopped. They felt it immediately. The room was no longer Rethar's alone. It was shared, balanced, terrifying. Kale's eyes flew open. Light poured from them. His servant scars had vanished. His posture was no longer submissive. He stood braced against Rethar's chest, glowing faintly, veins gilded, breath steadying as he finished absorbing the claim surge. The guards faltered. One dropped to a knee without understanding why. Rethar lifted his head. His eyes burned. Leave. The word carried layered dominance. Not heat. Not threat. Absolute command. Half the guards obeyed instinctively. The rest hesitated. The Queen Regent pushed forward through the shattered doorway. Her face was white. Her hands shook. What have you done? She whispered. Rethar didn't look at her. He looked at Kale. Kale felt something settle inside him. Not hunger. Alignment. The claim had anchored him. He was no longer just absorbing. He was bound. He reached up and placed his hand over Rethar's heart. Rethar inhaled sharply. Kale spoke quietly. He's not your weapon anymore. The Queen Regent stared. You're nothing but a void-born servant. Kale tilted his head. Once, those words would have destroyed him. Now they slid off. I was, Kale said. Then he leaned back against Rethar's chest. And now I am his. Rethar wrapped both arms around him. Possessive. Unapologetic. This bond stands, Rethar said. You don't get to unmake it. The Queen Regent backed away slowly. Fear had finally overtaken control. Rethar lowered his head to Kale's ear. The heat of his breath made Kale shiver. That was the first lock, Rethar murmured. Kale closed his eyes. His hunger purred, satisfied but alert. How many are there? Rethar's voice was rough. 3. Kale swallowed. And the last. Rethar tightened his hold. The mating claim. Kale's pulse spiked. Not from lust. From inevitability. Outside the chamber, the palace reeled. Inside it, 2 broken systems had fused into one. 7 chapters were narrowing. And the final convergence was no longer optional. It was coming, whether the kingdom survived it or not. Chapter 7. The palace did not sleep. Even when the guards retreated, even when the Queen Regent fled, even when the shattered doors were dragged shut and barred from the outside. The stone itself vibrated. It could feel them. Two forces locked inside the Western royal chamber, no longer leaking into corridors, but compressing. Rethar stood in the center of the room, bare-chested, golden light flickering faintly beneath his skin. His armor lay discarded across marble like the shell of something outgrown. Kale stood in front of him. No longer servant. No longer hollow. The golden channels beneath his skin pulsed in slow rhythm, mapping his body in luminous lines. They were not decoration. They were infrastructure. The air between them hummed. Not violently. Expectantly. Rethar exhaled slowly. We can't hold this half-bound. Kale nodded. The hunger inside him had changed again. It wasn't frantic anymore. It wasn't even sharp. It was deep. Like gravity. Pulling downward and inward. Toward completion. If we stop now, Rethar continued quietly, the circuit destabilizes. Kale swallowed. I can feel it. The bond they had forged in chaos was stabilizing them, but it was also building pressure. Alpha dominance continued to generate, feeding the connection in steady waves. Kale absorbed it automatically. But something in him wanted more than absorption. It wanted sealing. Rethar stepped closer. Kale didn't retreat. The distance between their bodies disappeared in increments. Each inch amplified the hum in the room. Rethar reached up slowly. His fingers hovered near Kale's collarbone. The golden lines there pulsed brighter in anticipation. This is the last lock, Rethar said. Kale met his gaze. His voice didn't tremble. Then stop waiting. Rethar's control snapped, not in violence. In inevitability. He pulled Kale flush against him. Skin to skin. Full contact. The effect was instantaneous. The circuit exploded open. Light tore outward from them in a silent shockwave that rattled the chamber walls. Kale gasped sharply as Rethar's alpha core poured into him without restraint. Not overflow. Not surge. It struck deep. Through muscle. Through bone. Through the hollow that had once defined him. Kale's back arched violently as he absorbed it. Every golden channel in his body ignited, mapping him in blazing lines of molten light. Rethar buried his face in Kale's neck and growled, a deep, primal sound that vibrated through both of them. You're mine, Rethar said. The words weren't possession in cruelty. They were anchoring. Biological command. Kale's hands fisted in Rethar's hair. And you're burning for me. Rethar groaned at the truth of it. His dominance surged again, responding instinctively to Kale's voice. Kale didn't recoil. He pulled. He drew the energy inward deliberately. The void inside him didn't gape anymore. It structured. It redirected. It accepted. Rethar felt the shift. His breathing steadied. The roaring inferno inside his veins quieted into controlled flame. Kale's body adjusted around the intake, muscles firming, spine strengthening, heartbeat synchronizing with Rethar's rhythm. Their foreheads pressed together. Breath mingled. The hunger peaked. Then inverted. What had begun as starvation became saturation. The bond snapped into place. It wasn't visible, but it was undeniable. The hum in the chamber shifted tone. Lower. Stable. Rethar stilled. Kale stilled. For the first time since they touched in that corridor. Silence. Not emptiness. Rethar opened his eyes. The gold in them burned steady. Controlled. He searched Kale's face. Kale looked back at him. No hollowness. No desperation. Only clarity. It's done, Kale whispered. Rethar nodded once. Yes. The final lock had sealed. The mating claim was no longer ritual. It was biological fact. They were bound in every layer, dominance, circuit, flesh. Outside the chamber, the palace alarms died abruptly. The wards recalibrated. The oppressive pressure that had plagued the kingdom for decades vanished. Servants in distant halls lifted their heads in confusion. Alphas across the palace inhaled sharply, realizing the constant background weight had disappeared. The system had corrected. Rethar stepped back just enough to look at Kale fully. You're not shaking, he observed. Kale flexed his fingers slowly. I'm not hungry. Rethar's jaw tightened at that. He reached out and brushed his thumb along one of the golden lines tracing Kale's collarbone. The light responded faintly. "You're still void," Rethar said quietly. Kale shook his head. "No." He took Rethar's hand and placed it flat over his own heart. "I'm balance." Rethar's breath caught. The words settled heavy between them. Balance. The Alpha who produced endlessly. The Omega who absorbed endlessly. Now neither was alone in their excess. Rethar pulled Kale back into his chest. This time not from desperation. Not from fear of destabilization. From what? "You'll stand beside me in court," Rethar said. Kale exhaled against his skin. "They'll try to challenge it." Rethar's lips brushed the crown of Kale's head. "Let them." Kale looked up at him. "What am I to them?" Rethar's gaze hardened. "You are the reason I no longer burn the world." Kale considered that. The weight of it. The danger of it. 7 chapters had taken him from marble floors to the center of the kingdom's power. He had begun as something unwanted. Discarded. Silent. Now he was the axis. The chamber doors creaked as the outer wards unlocked. The world waited. Rethar laced their fingers together deliberately. "Ready?" he asked. Kale squeezed once. The circuit thrummed steady between them. "Yes." They walked toward the doors together. Not Alpha leading Omega. Not King dragging Servant. But two forces aligned. The marble outside would remember this too. The day the storm found its ground. And the void found its sun.